And now a documentary film that looks at the history of the police drama series, featuring interviews with writers, actors and producers, and with the police themselves. The film examines the way programs such as Z-Cars, the Sweeney, Law and Order have affected how the public regard the police, and even the way the police regard themselves.
The last part of my service, I was going to post-mortems on a regular basis. And I remember my grandson, it was his birthday, and he was having a birthday party. And all of a sudden I was in this post-mortem where this chap was lying and out with the arms and, you know, and blood. And it was, the sun was shining through the window on this body. I thought, I must phone and wish him happy birthday. I picked the phone up, which was just a matter of feet away. Picks the phone up and, hello, sonny, and this, that, and the other. They're all laughing and asking what I'm doing. And I've got these images. I've got these images of the kids playing on one side of my head. And I've got this horrible thing in front of us. And I thought, you know, I don't need this, you know. This isn't right. There's something wrong. And people should know about this. And it was one of the things that actually stimulated me to start writing. Strangely enough. It was just those images. I thought, well, why should I have to take all this, you know? And I think a lot of policemen sometimes feel that way. People think of the police sometimes as the midnight mechanics who would come along and take away all the rubbish, take them away, dispose of them, put them somewhere. They don't care where it goes.
Well, lad, I've been talking to a mate of yours about some photographs. You know what I'm talking about, do you? No. Lad, look at me. Do you?
Yeah.
We may look the same, but we're singled out, we're different. And the power we have is the power to take you by the hand, by the arm, by the shoulder, and lock you up. And we can do that. I could do that to you now. And that has a fascination. It has a fascination for me. I need to control it. Part of the fascination of policing is when perhaps that power is out of control. And I think we see that in a lot of police programs.
Get your trousers on. You're licked.
It's important for fictional drama particularly to reveal the worst side of the police. Because if we don't see the worst side of the police, we're deceived. We think it's all well and good and we don't have to worry about anything. But once we stop worrying about these things, then that is the big danger, because justice is what the public make it in the end.
The person who becomes a policeman has almost exactly the same pathology as the criminal, to express that susceptibility toward crime, if you like. And that's principally my interest in them, because as I've looked at television over the years, and particularly television dealing with the police, I've seen nothing other than the contribution to the propaganda battle that the police have been waging to promote this heroic image. And in fact, they're anything but heroes.
There's nothing worse than a rotten copper. Nothing. It's the lowest thing that crawls on God's earth.
I realise that I've been writing about the police now for 30 years. The day-to-day confrontation with life is so endlessly dramatic, So that's enough of the reason. But the real reason is that they confront the full range of darkness. Their life is a constant confrontation with horror. We ask from them a commitment to our livelihood, our safety, and we say, you will do that for us. And we don't give them an option. It's comes with the territory of being a policeman. But we don't pay them the respect of understanding what a cost it is to them. How much in terms of ordinary life they sacrifice to be our guardians.
Victor 2 for BD, off watch, Newtown Station. Refreshments.
Roger, Victor 2.
I'm down for me tea.
You're always down for something. Filling your teeth, your supper's your pitch.
Will you stop pumping like a tub and let's get up there. 20 minutes scuffs, the lot. What's the matter with you? You get out of the wrong side of the bed or something this morning?
Z-Cars made a tremendous impact. It was very different because of the regional speech and locations. This was a real new world emerging from outside London, from a real working England. At the same time, it blew away all the comfortable and secure conventions of the old police series like Dixon. Police could now be rude, they could be unpleasant, they needn't be perfect, and this opened up a whole sphere of possibility that many dramatists have occurred since. But probably above all, it just looked new. It was a new TV form. There were 6 or 7 cameras moving around to create live drama. There were cars on back projections, there were film and video clips. This, for people watching at home, was new and exciting TV. It was like nothing they'd ever seen before. And that really was, at the end of the day, the thing that made Z-Cars so important.
Miss Sullivan, open up, it's the police. Miss Sullivan?
Whenever the laws of any state are broken, the duly authorized...
Well, Troy and I have been working together. One night we were watching telly, watching Brod Crawford doing highway patrol. And whether that was the catalyst or not, it certainly made us think, why are we watching an American television series about the interaction between American policemen and American society on British television?
Come on, Joe.
Why can't we make our own with the same panache, the same drive, the same sense of movement, the same sense of being like a movie?
You want some? Come and get it.
All cars. All cars. All cars in positions between East Lancs Road and Preston.
It's going to cost more to buy a car on HP.
Well, I had mumps and I was lying in bed with testicles as big as cricket balls and scanning the radio for something to listen to, and I heard the police wave bands. Young policemen coping with problems which weren't as cut and dried as you would think they might be in Dixon of Dock Green. So they were dealing with trucks who were old enough to be their father, and intransigent problems with families and that.
The look of it, it were only a very small brick all through.
Aye, small brick, Daddy-o. Big window.
Oh, me grandfather clock was too old for the shelf, so it stood 90 years on the floor. It was older before the old man himself.
Kirby was a new town which was taking a lot of people who'd been shipped out of Liverpool, and it lacked a lot of social amenities like pubs and dance halls and cinemas. In fact, everyone used to go back into Liverpool and then steal a bus and to get back to Kirby on a Friday night. And it had a kind of quite a Wild West reputation.
Well, if it isn't my old friend Sergeant Twentyman.
Go to Z52's area and patrol until further notice.
The police have begun this crime patrol using cars, getting bobbies off the streets and into cars as a sort of mobile exercise. So I went down there and hung around for a couple of weeks with the police. And all sorts of things began to happen.
Lynch! You all right, Lynch? Just about, sir.
I wasn't interested in making another static series about the police. That we wanted not only cars that moved from one society or bit of society to another, but also we wanted very much to be able to break up those long scenes, those long, boring, moralistic scenes that television was full of.
Q and cut.
We were lucky because we got Studio One at the Television Centre, which was just open, and 6 cameras. And we were able to use them to make very short scenes that would, we could move around the world very quickly. So we had the cars to move in, we had the world to move around in, we had back projection screens to have scenes in the cars, so even though we were in the studio, it felt like we were moving.
I don't film for 32 seconds.
I mean, it's all right saying that it was a live show and that guests had a terrible time with it being a live show, but we regulars too, once it got there to kind of 5 to 7 or 5 to 8, what time it was going out, live, da-da-dee-da-da-da-da, the nerves. I mean, Jock in the car with me, thank God it was in black and white, because his face was like a beetroot. And Jimmy had an excuse to go paler than pale, and joke and joke and joke. And Jeremy Kemp became like the ouzel bird. He seemed to kind of become so introvert, he'd go round and round and round before the shows, disappearing up his own arse. He was so kind of, so terrified. And Frank Windsor used to just break wind a lot as Sergeant Watt, which I can't cope with people farting. And Stratford John used to be sick for an hour beforehand. He had a masseuse who massaged him for an hour and used to appear, like a kind of white balloon onto the set. So he'd never get through it. But Frank, he could drop them just like that. So it made him frequently fart.
True enough. Same applies to you.
It's a crime car, that's what it is. You can tell by the aerial. Crime car?
I wanted to get away from murders and big robbery, just keep the crime very low, but where it impacted, such as in episode 6, the robbery of a gas meter and the effect that has on the old people in whose flat it takes place.
Look, your flat's been broken into, but it happens to thousands of people. It's a bit of a shock at first, but you get over it.
Yes, but they've intruded on my privacy.
Then don't worry, don't fret, love, it's all right.
Troy's dialogue was wonderful. It's not at all naturalistic. It's formalised, it's a dance, it's a play with rhythms, it's a play with words that you wouldn't use normally, but which Troy somehow manages to make believable in the mouths of people.
What goes on up the roof?
Well, the washing gets dried and the kids make love.
Well, what takes you there?
I like the fresh air coming. I like just an hour away from the smell of frying fat and stale beer and a diesel smoke. I like to get away from the sweat of the workers and the bad breath of the police.
Oh, you're a joker, Nicola.
No, I'm an educated man.
No, look, Nicol.
Just be careful. Oh, this is what I get at.
You're going back to the basement, you're going to answer them.
Well, I was a very young actor when I did those 2 shows. In Z-Cars, I looked like the villain, and they thought I was the villain because of the past backstory that they built into the character, but it ended up that the truth was that I wasn't the villain.
Well, this is Tony, is it? Yeah, he's a big fella. He's shut up, isn't he? Following in Father's footsteps, by all accounts.
I've tried everything.
You making any trouble? You want to hit you? Who the flaming hell do you think you're talking to?
You. Want me to say it again?
Yeah. Dixon, I really was the villain. I looked like a villain. I was working class, and that immediately made me suspect. And I was the villain. No ambiguity, no problem. That's it.
They think they're on the earth, don't they?
You have got it, babe.
You know what I'd like to do? I'd like to rough one of them up, you know, do him over. It'd be a long time getting up when I'd finished with him, I tell you.
Z-Cars was much edgier and more complex. And that, in a way, is one of the differences between the right on the two shows. That Dixon, nice family entertainment for early Saturday evening, was the drama of reassurance.
Well, mind how you drive, and please don't leave your Christmas shopping lying around for anyone to pinch out of your car. Take care. I'll see you next week. Good night.
We'd all been bred on the diet of Dixon and Doc Green, which was, in fairness, divorced from reality, except to say as a police officer at that time, and of course with many others, we actually liked the image that Dixon created and the message he always left behind. Made us feel pretty proud that we were much respected by society.
Return with prisoners to station. Over.
Yeah, there's a lot of static about tonight. I didn't hear that one.
And when, of course, Z-Cars came on, we were really dismayed that they'd portrayed a police officer as being brutish and violent domestically as well as in relation to duties.
Is this the stain the hot pot made?
What do you know about that hot pot?
Well, I don't know. It looks to me the sort of stain a hot pot would make if it was thrown by an angry wife.
Well, look at Broken Chair, where a very frightened husband threw himself to avoid being blinded for life.
Ah, now you shouldn't hit her, Bob. Bite her with love if you must, but don't hit her.
Oh, it was an accident.
I well remember the first episode of Z-Cars because I was an inspector at the time, and I went home off duty, and there was my wife, and she was clearly agitated. And I said, "What is it?" And she said, "I've just seen something on television, you wouldn't believe it. They've portrayed a policeman not only with the most appalling table manners you ever saw, but a man who actually beat his wife. And I'm going to write to the editor of the Yorkshire Post, and I've got the letter drafted here, and whether you agree with it or not, it's going. And I shall sign myself policeman's wife," which she did, and the editor did publish the letter. But I said to my wife, it's an amazing coincidence, because I have just been to see a policeman whose wife had been beaten up by him, and she'd come and complained about it. This is not what we were used to. We were used to seeing Dixon, and here we were seeing quite different people.
Well, we got that fella in Manchester.
I saw that, sir.
I won't top him, you know.
No?
No, medical history as long as your arm. Still, it's had one good effect.
The new crime patrol.
Aye, about time, too.
The Barlow character was originally shown as a kind of dreamer, as a passed-over inspector who was always dreaming that he would become very important. And the crime car he saw was a political way of getting himself up the ladder. Alan Stratford-Johns turned that into a very strong character, and he became kind of a proto-authoritarian figure on British television, and people were thrilled by the fact that he was there laying down the law and being a great big bully.
Just investigating, sir.
You didn't speak to Mr. Wilson or anything like that? Because if you did, I'll have you back on the beat tomorrow morning, both of you.
No, sir, just cruised around, sir.
Oh, just cruised around at Wimsley Roadway, eh? Well, I think you're down Rossendale. And Sergeant Watt thinks you're down Rossendale. And you should be down Rossendale, keeping a sharp lookout for the schools merchants.
Yes, sir. Sorry, sir, but you see, we were just...
Investigating, yes, I heard you say that before, Lynch. Well, let me tell you something, that the only ones who do the investigating around here are Sergeant Watt and myself, you get that?
Yes, sir.
And if you think you're helping your pals on Z Victor 1 by cruising around wasting car patrol time, you're sloppier coppers than I thought you were, which is saying something. All right, Sergeant Watt, I've nothing more to say to these two. Oh, not now.
When we were up in Lancashire pre-filming, the little bits used to be filmed, one of the big shots said, "You know, Mr. Johns, as the senior officer, we rely on you to uphold the honour of the force. There's only one decent show." And I said, "What's that?" He said, "Dixon and Doc Green." I said, "Oh, God help you." I said, "Because if you think it's going to be like Dixon, you're going to be very, very sorry."
Oh, I'm ready for off. All right. Well, got yourself sorted, have you? Well, have you spoken to her? I don't see what the hell he's got to do. I'll tell you what he's got to do with me, John. If you want me to, that is. Well, for a start, you're never here.
Oh, now, look...
Oh, duty hours, strict duty hours, aye. Since when has this been a job you run by the clock?
Times I should be here, I'm here.
Huh? 3 days you're in London.
If it's anything to do with you, we're getting a divorce.
Oh.
Not before time.
Best thing. Well, isn't it?
What do you know about it? What do you know about any of it?
All right. That's enough, John.
Yeah. Go on.
I met some Barlows and I met some Watts. I met people whose selection criteria, which is now almost an art form within the personnel department, was simply that he was a big lad who could look after himself, and that was sufficient to get you onto the job, and that you were sort of crime orientated. And if you could possibly sink four pints of mild faster than the detective sergeant, then that was another good criteria to be selected. But in all seriousness, there were people who were in charge whose attitude to life was very black and white.
What about the second car, then?
Smith, sir.
Which Smith?
Fancy Smith.
I'm from Lee, him that thinks Lee's the centre of the earth.
Oh, you pick 'em, don't you? I'll say you pick 'em.
I'll let them warm up a bit. A little more yet. Let them work it out for themselves.
The policeman who had the biggest impression on me was a man called Pulfrey. He was the chief constable of Lancashire. He's a giant, about 6'7", 6'8", an amazing, weird, strange man. He had squads of men, battalions, they'd all stand to attention. They shook. Everyone was rather scared of Pulfrey. And he used to come and see me about once a month in the studios. He'd take me by the lapels. They're going to be good to eat. They're going to be really good. They're going to be brilliant, frightening, and richer than ever, Brian, eh? You're my favourite. And he was a very strange man. He was known as 51 Bodies. He had personally found 51 bodies. Found 51 bodies, Brian. I can always tell when a man's a villain. I said, how's that, Pulfrey? I can smell him. I once knew a villain, he said. He killed somebody. I knew he'd put this knife in this field in 7 acres. So I got squads of men, and we went along there, and I said, find that knife. And after about 7 months, he couldn't find that knife. 7 months. So I said, burn the bloody topsoil. So we burned the topsoil, and I got him. This was Pulfrey. I was rather I based a lot of my character on him. I tried to make Fancy Smith also slightly, a very imaginative policeman, and capable of going on the edge a little bit. And he knew villains, he could find them. You know, really, I suppose he could have been a Borstal boy. He could have gone to the other side, Fancy, but instead of being a good poacher, become a good gamekeeper. And I felt that with Pulfrey. I think Pulfrey knew the criminal mind. He was on that border.
I wanted to focus my philosophy of the program upon the way the daily involvement with the public affected the police, how it changed them, why they were police, all of this.
Hi.
Well, what's he got to do with the lad?
I found them. Filthy things. I found them in his room.
Well, where'd you get them, lad? Hey?
I got them off Tommy Shields. He had lots of them. I got them off him.
Come on.
Happy Families is where Fancy Smith acknowledges his inability to stop evil, to save the children.
I know the Shields.
You know where he lives?
Up the road somewhere.
I want to know where you got hold of them.
Oh, aye.
One of them says he got them from you.
Well, it's not true.
Isn't it?
No.
Where did it come from?
Fancy coming to the end when he has finally to confront the fact that he can't kill this man who has been selling pornography to children. He can't deal with it as he wants to, which is to break his neck. He, through his encounter, come to understand all of man's day-to-day confrontation with himself and his inadequacy.
I should have let me take Shields down to the station.
Fellow, how good that would have done.
You got a better idea?
No.
You've got to do something.
think the genre of the police series, in a way, was dead right for that time, because we were able to use it to show various kinds of realities in a way that was speedy and pacey and fun. Now, I think the working people of Liverpool and of Kirby in particular, with this terrible incident in the Haysel Stadium, the tragedy of Hillsborough, and then finally this dreadful event with the boy Jimmy Bolger, has turned the image of those people into something which is quite terrifying. And I think that one of the great challenges now is to find a way to look again into the realities of that life and to show it to the world in its complexity.
Well, I did think that Z-Cars was going to be the last police series, I thought Dixon was past its sell-by date, and that there was probably room for just one more police series before everyone got bored with it. Because the problem with police series is that they kind of give you an answer to everything. They superimpose over the anarchy of life this kind of orderly structure, and they also provide strong father figures. All of these things I'm very cagey about. Over the years, the series veered far away from the kind of original, kind of urgent, kind of working class feel to it. And Z-Cars was kept on long after its sell-by date because they thought by then they had to put a new police series in, and they were terrified of what a new police series would reveal about the police in this country. So they kept the All One going, rather lift up the carpet. They didn't know what new writers would do with the police series.
The fact was that Z-Cars wandered along for 18 years as a BBC institution, and it wasn't reflecting anything that was happening on the streets. When I was researching Sweeney, I was down in flying squad unofficially, and I was around Commander Drury, who was about to go to jail. So, I mean, there was this sense of that it was very, very raw in policing in London at that time. So we got an invitation to go to the flying squad, and on this morning, I and the producers arrived in this office, and there was Jack Slipher and his well-known sergeant. And so I went in and we started to talk, and we sent him the script, and Jack Slipher said, I've read the script, and it's perfectly obvious to me that you're getting inside information. Well, of course, we were getting information, and the immortal lines like, I'm not going to hit you, my sergeant is going to hit you, were taken from, you know, actual case histories. And taking baseball bats and bashing in the windscreens of cars that they were pursuing, that was all part of the stock and trade.
When you murder one of us, there are no rules at all. I don't know what you mean. Now, you say you get 6 months off for good behaviour. I'm saying, what good behaviour? You just hit me. That means the full 18 months plus an additional sentence for assaulting a police officer. I haven't hit you. No. My sergeant's going to hit me. But I'm going to say you hit me. You'd pull that one, eh? You know I would.
They were obviously setting these programs up on actual jobs that had taken place and what we dealt with, and written round them, you know, which is the basic of the whole story. But then after about 10 or 12 episodes, it suddenly went over the top. I mean, John Thor was running one of the robbery from a pub,
And in no time we got very close to the landlady, and he was running it from a telephone aside of the bed, and never left the bed sort of thing. Because the wives thought that was the norm, and that wasn't very good. And another one where upset quite a lot of police, where he had an informant who didn't want to be found by anybody, and against his wishes they locked him up for a couple of days. Things like this, and they went over the top.
Hope you're bloody insured.
The Sweeney was one of my particular favourites. I was in Hendon Training College. You had to make sure on a Wednesday or a Thursday night they were showing reruns of the Sweeney. You had to get down into the TV lounge at least half an hour before it started, otherwise you weren't guaranteed a seat. It was chock-a-block. Everybody was there. You'd see villains being chased, shot, and you'd find the whole room erupting, shouting, "Go on, get him, kill the bastard."
All right, Tinkerbell. You're next.
But I thought it was a watershed in the way in which policing representation on the screen was changing. There was the hero in the form of Regan, who actually got things done, but got things done in unconventional ways. He broke all of the rules, but of course the public wants to believe that at the end of the day the police are going to get their man. Now, of course, they want to believe, and they must believe, and we must, that they're going to get their man in conformity with all of the rules. Regan was the sort of character who broke all of the rules, and I did worry at that time that some people who were aspiring to become members of, say, the Flying Squad or the CID, not knowing what it was really like within that department, would think that that is the way everybody acted. And it was difficult to know whether the Sweeney was trying with a lot of dramatic license to ape the members of the Flying Squad, or whether indeed the members of the Flying Squad or other members of the service would actually try and ape the Sweeney. And that was rather dangerous.
Yes, we broke car windows with pickaxe handles. We drove cars into other cars and once or twice raped them off. We drank quite a lot of whiskey sometimes. This wasn't all the time, but it certainly was what we did on occasions. And but there again, we didn't have any role to follow, any model. And I suppose with the benefit of hindsight, we had the Sweeney. It was coming out of our television sets every Wednesday or whatever it was. They were like us. They were doing our job. Maybe that was how to do it.
Get your trousers on. You're nicked.
So Regan did break the rules. We all did. So you had to break into a house, or maybe you didn't have a warrant.
You can have a lie.
All right, sometimes they went wrong, then you'd got the wrong house. But at the end of the day, really, if the ends justify the means and the arrest was made, the property was recovered, no one was hurt, and the public was served. You know, there was nothing wrong in that, not in our opinion, and it was truthful. You weren't, the only thing you were breaking was maybe one or two of the rules of justice.
When you're dealing every day with a police officer, especially in the busy parts of this country, you're dealing with some pretty awful things. And they're quite repetitive. They're happening all the time. And it doesn't take long before you start to accept the rather sad side of life as normal. That it does have an effect upon you, that you accept all these things as normal, and it's got to be pretty abnormal before you're actually shocked by it.
I was standing with a senior cop overlooking Piccadilly Circus one night at a do, And we'd had a couple of drinks, and we were sort of being a bit nostalgic perhaps. And he looked down and he said, I started my career down there at 18, and I used to cry myself to sleep every night. And then he looked, and the eyes were very cold, and he said, I don't cry anymore, you know. And I thought then, yeah, well, you have got to develop a skin. You've got to do something to protect yourself, because they experience the most horrendous things.
Okay, thanks. Right, let's have a look at Sleeping Beauty.
Don Sharbles. He nutted me once about 7 years ago. I still got the bump.
What does he say?
Right back, mate. And when it's finished, watch it through.
Won't be sending this to Jeremy Beale, then.
Well, it's grim. It's grim humour. It's the blackest humour ever. And I don't want to upset anybody, but I remember going to this woman who had committed suicide, and she had hung herself from the banisters with a pair of tights. And what she'd done, she'd put these tights around her neck, and she'd sat down the steps, one by one by one. And what happened was this set of tights was stretched like a wire. It was like a fiddle string. I remember I had to break into this house, and I was with this cop, and was sort of looking around. This woman had left notes, please feed the plants, and watch the step, watch your head on the step and all. And there she's hanging, suspended. And I remember this policeman said, hey, we might get a good tune out of this woman. And he started strumming this piece of wire, and there was this sound went through her, And I mean, that's humour. It's not very good humour, but it's an indication of police humour, because it was the only way we could deal with the situation.
Police officers become almost unshockable, actually. And that does have an effect upon a police officer. And it also means that in relation to the ethics of the job, that they sometimes behave incorrectly, to say the least, and sometimes criminally, actually, because they think that the ends will justify the means. And the problem is they get so convinced that they know the answer that they never really do the true investigation.
Look, we've got one in the book. We need a body. You've been elected.
Yeah, but you'll think different when my brief gets here.
Little bald-headed geezer. He's here, flapping about like a queer penguin.
Well, come on, I want to see him.
When I'm ready.
A TV series will get inside and challenge and change the public's notion of how policemen work and how they operate by presenting an opposing or different definition to that of the previous police series. And so there's police series like The Sweeney coming along, which bring the scenario back to London, and a kind of rather rough, tough and increasingly violent London. A further turn of the wheel is something like Newman's Law and Order, which it's hard to see how that could have been done in a series, but seems to take the thing to perhaps an absolute extreme.
We didn't want a squealing tyre show. We'd already had very successful series which had glorified the police, and particularly Detective Branch, on the basis that you can't make an omelette breaking eggs and so on and so forth. But there's no question that the character John Thor played brilliantly was a hero. And Gordon and I thought it was time to do a few shows that were more anchored in concrete reality, let's put it that way.
Well, it was a response in as much that I saw time and time again policemen being portrayed as heroes, as heroic figures who solved problems, who made our society safer. And I wanted to present a picture of the police which I felt more accurately reflected the police, which I believe Law and Order does do. It shows them to a man to be corrupt, to be prepared to bend the rules.
This is what I'm going to do. I'll reduce the charge, and we'll have a summary trial here. But you've got to plead to it. It'll be months before you go up for sentence. And you'll be out on bail. You'll be able to do a bit of villainy and provide for your family when you do go away.
It shows them, if necessary, for the benefit of a safer, more secure society, to manufacture evidence to put known criminals away. Well, I don't want the police doing that in my name, and I was hoping that a lot of people watching it would take the same view.
For me, Law and Order was probably the most outrageous of the police series I've personally watched. I thought it was totally over the top, a travesty, a sickening travesty of police work. And it picked upon the small minority of bad behaviour and pretended that that was the normal behaviour for all police officers. An outrageous programme.
Well, Law and Order series I thought was very, very good. There was most of the scenes there at times have happened in the job without a doubt, and they must have had a professional advisor somewhere within our midst, and we never did find out who it was.
As far as anyone out there is concerned, you don't exist anymore. Not until I say so. Don't give me that. You can't keep me banged up here.
Listen, you wicked bastard. You pulled a right stroke with that security guard. So you can whine for your brief and about your rights, but it won't do you any good. You've got information we want, so you'll be here assisting us with our inquiries as long as it takes.
Yeah. It costs me nothing sitting here, does it?
Oh, you're right. Stand up then, you bastard. Oh.
Pyle existed. I knew a Pyle, briefly. He was a rarity, but nonetheless, it was a fairly true-to-life portrayal of that type of police officer.
I think you'll find you got as much to say as your mate.
And in the time that the programme describes, you know, there was scope for police officers to be like that. I don't think that scope is there anymore. But yes, people who were there, I think, perhaps for the thrill of the chase, more than anything.
Yes, I think with Law and Order, I didn't like the series. I found it quite disturbing. And I found it disturbing for one reason, and that was partly its authenticity, so far as the artifacts, so far as the police stations, even the dress of the police officers of the day with their braces that they could put their thumbs in and they could twang their braces, was authentic. I think some of the procedures as well struck me as really true to life.
Okay, start a docket. See if we can't put him away this time. Looks as though he might be due.
Overdue, I'd say.
For the moment-to-moment credibility of it, we had detectives, they were often actually on duty, pretending they were somewhere else, on the set pretty well every hour that we shot. Our actors were, as it were, playing them, but they were standing behind the camera every day. But they wouldn't work for nothing. They don't work for nothing. So we had to pay them. They were not allowed to be there, and they certainly were not allowed to be paid. But I made sure they were paid quite handsomely with used notes in brown envelopes handed over to them in the various saloon bars. And in fact, it was BBC money from the budget. But I felt I didn't want to burden the management with that information.
There is a sense in which the policeman and the crook have more in common than the policeman has with other people, because he spends more time with crooks, or with people who are on the margins, or people who are informants.
What do you have in mind?
Well, I could put a good earner into you.
He's always doing deals which are not moral deals. He's undermining his own morality all the time.
You tell me what it's worth.
It's a bit late for that now, son. My entire squad's involved. They'll all want a little taste.
It can happen to some officers, and this is part of a problem when you're working in this sort of anarchic environment where the rules are unclear on both sides. And yes, it can corrode you. In the early days, in the 70s, when that sort of close proximity police work was really coming into its own, there were no rules. They hadn't been drawn up because nobody knew that there was really any need for rules. And so the Pyles of this world, and to a lesser extent, I suppose, the Regans, had a blank sheet of paper. Some of them got it right. It worked, and they stayed more or less the right side of the line. Others got it wrong, and they went down another path.
Law and Order is one of the most powerful pieces of television we've seen about policing. In some ways, it's also one of the narrowest, or it is narrow and selective. It focuses on the particular relation between police and villains, and it shows a world in which the two are virtually indistinguishable, and it brings a logical conclusion to a certain trend in police series. Now that's very powerful, it's selective, and why not? All art is selective, it has to be, and realism is selective too. But if you contrast that with the original intention of Z-Cars, which was to attempt to look at a whole society through the mechanism of the police series, to see the structures, the layers, the changes, something really quite different has happened to the police series.
For you. There's been a development. We've got the Wilson thieves.
Have you got the watch?
We've got the thieves. We've got the fence, but we haven't got the watch. Nobody's seen the watch.
Well, the line or Wilson's line.
Yeah, well, somebody's lying.
Well, it isn't me. Not as anybody seems to believe that. I'm telling you, as far as I'm concerned, I'm through with the force after this lot.
Happen you will be, son. But the force may not be through with you.
I am utterly and abjectly pissed off with this little lot. I've given the best years of my life to the job. I've got 18 bloody commendations, if you include the one I didn't get yesterday. And how does this wonderful police force show its gratitude for all my years of unstinting effort? It bangs me up in a crabby little cell like some cheap little villain. All because a tow rake called Hutchinson's got a few bottles twitching on the 5th floor. Now, because that poor little bastard had the guts to get off his arse, I'm going to have to be reinstated. And what do you bunch of bleeding double-dyed hypocrites want now? You want me to crawl back to work and be terribly grateful that I didn't get nicked for something I didn't do? Well, you can stuff it.
You and your team. Now, you can't touch the other two, because they didn't do anything to me. Well, I walked a man who said he'd committed several armed robberies around a bit. I fed him hamburgers and coffee and presumed, to my lasting shame, that it was my duty not to lose him, but to get him to confess, so he could be put somewhere where he wouldn't kill an innocent person. Mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. You broke the rules.
Come on.
Alderman F. Mayhew, from his many friends on the Dock Green Council. The break-ins.
I had to have money, see? I did it first time just as a lark. Nobody suspected a copper, see?
Shut up! You can tell me to get to the station. There's nothing worse than a rotten copper. Nothing. It's the lowest thing that crawls on God's earth. Take off that uniform. Take it off! And when you've got it off, put on something different. Then I'll arrest you. I'm taking you in, Carr, but not in that tunic.
I think that the police shows tell you about whenever they were popular, from Dixon of Dock Green, Z-Cars right through the Sweeneys and Law and Order and Between the Lines, tell you a lot about the very choice of how the stories are told and what stories are told and the stance towards the police. Tell you a great deal about the attitude of the public towards the police at that particular time. And now, a mindless hostility to the police seems to me to be just as sterile as to say there's the occasional bad apple in the barrel and most of them are fine. I think we've now reached a point where we can be much more sophisticated about our look at the police.
My sergeant's going to hit me, but I'm going to say you hit me.
Well, let me tell you something, that the only ones who do the investigating around here are Sergeant Watt and myself, you get that?
I'd like to rough one of them up, you know, do him over. It'd be a long time getting up when I'd finished with him, I tell you.
Listen, you wicked bastard. You've got information we want. So you'll be here assisting us with our inquiries as long as it takes.
When you looked at me in the room, what I could see were your face. Disgust. Hate. Something like hate.
I believe you.
I believe he's stupid, as well as vicious and depraved.
The desire to discover the truth of why man lives in this hellish situation where he murders and where he lives with evil, compromises with evil, does, it's a less emotive word, does bad things. And so we search to understand. And that very search draws us more and more into this world that the policemen inhabit, and we discover a parallel in our life.
You've spoken to her. I don't see what the hell he's got to do.
I'll tell you what he's got to do with me, John.
What do you know about it? What do you know about any of it?
All right. That's enough, John.
The stories I told took me down dark roads into areas that have not been good for me. I'm not well. I've had Parkinson's. But more important than that, I think that the work that I've done over these last 30 years has taken such a toll on my ability to deal with this evil that I've written about and thought about and tried to understand. But it's an incurable obsession, and it will wreak its havoc on you. So that in the end, the only thing that you want to do is understand why one person hurts another person, even while you know that the explanation is only in you. And you have to get there.
It's only my thin blue line, God bless it, that stops that lot from strangling you in your sleep.
Bit of a jungle, if I may say so, sir.
Well, mind how you drive, and now, please don't leave your Christmas shopping lying around for anyone to pinch out of your car.
You're watching Cops on the Box on BBC